I found that nice little acronym, the PATH, which is both the literal meaning of that's the path we're on, that's the path that will lead us to making an impact, but it's also a nice acronym which stands for plain and simple.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode, The Art of Communication in Business. Better words mean better business, increased influence, and richer relationships. Our next guest helps leaders across the globe find the right words so they can make a bigger impact. With us today is the founder of Dr. Gerharz, The Art of Communicating, Dr. Michael Gerharz. So great to have you on. Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, Chris, I'm great. It's fun to be here. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Same here. We always like to ask our guests, tell us about your journey. What were you doing before and how did that kind of lead you into what you're doing today?
That's a fun question because it always gets people kind of a pause because given that I'm a communication advisor today, they kind of struggle when they hear that originally I'm a computer scientist. That's where my PhD is in. So it's in mobile communications. And we're actually not the kind of person you would immediately associate with great communication, right? And but to be honest, that's exactly the reason why I took that journey. Because I was just purely frustrated with all the great ideas that I'd been seen thrown into a trash bin due to that problem. It's not singular to the field. It's actually a universal problem, but it's where I saw it firsthand. I was around doing my PhD when the mobile phone revolution changed the world. I've seen many great ideas change the world, take on a life of their own. But I've seen even more of them being forgotten because no one cared for finding the right words, because they believed that the ideas would win on their own. They used the boring PowerPoint templates. And even when talking to experts, like at a conference where there's hundreds of experts in the room, I've seen it happen that not a single one of those understood a word. And actually, they didn't even understand what they turned down, which might have been a brilliant idea, and the paper was brilliant, but they just didn't care to find the words to make the audience care. And that's how I started on my journey. I just didn't want that for my ideas. I started looking for better ways, started writing a blog. First customers reached out, and that's how I got on the journey to helping people find those words.
Nice. It's always interesting to hear about these journeys because it seems like this was a solution to a problem that you had yourself, with which many entrepreneurs start their journey that way. They realize I need to fix this problem for myself, and then other people have this problem, and then you realize the impact that it could have. Communication is huge. My background is in marketing. That goes big into behavior, psychology, communication, visual communication as well. But communication is foundation to getting things done. When we send an email, when we make a phone call, text message, give a presentation, what's missing with our communication pieces? Is there anything that we can do to help strengthen that practice a bit more so we can be more effective?
Yeah, obviously we could talk for weeks about that topic without at least me getting bored. But if you'd force me to boil it down to one of the most important things, it's to step off the hero's pedestal, to stop trying to impress people and start resonating with what matters to them, to just being helpful to their needs. And not communicate like in a way of turning the spotlight on yourself, bragging about how great that idea is, but just trying to find the clearest possible way and the most helpful way possible. And by doing that, make people seen and heard and recognize that's different than the usual communication. Their ears will open up and doors will open up for you.
Absolutely. And for me in marketing, a lot of the times when we look at any campaign, work with a business, we kind of ask them, we have to talk about three topics: their audience, their offer, their messaging. What is it that they do? The product, offer, solution, benefits. But who is this for? Because oftentimes we need to consider who our audience is in order to craft our message, because it's not as important to get our feelings off of our chest as it is that the receiver actually hears and understands that message. What do you think about considering the audience and what influence they might have on our communication style? Is there anything that we should consider when thinking about what communication style we should try on a particular audience?
Yeah, first of all, the audience is the whole point of the presentation, right? We're not doing it for ourselves. We know everything already, right? The point is not to just transmit it and throw a bunch of information and data at them. I mean, that's the usual way that presentations are done, right? Well, here's everything I have to say. I'm just throwing it at you. And when I'm done, you're going to be convinced. Which obviously people usually aren't, right? Because, usually they tune out at some point because it's just overwhelming, confusing, and boring. And so there's got to be a better way. And that way starts by listening to the audience. Well, before you speak, while you speak, and after you speak, you ask questions about what's the point of that meeting. So why are we gathering here? What do you hope to get out of that? And then you might do your research and look at, so what kind of audience is that? What's the current trend in that industry or something like that. During the audience, you pay attention to how their body language is, the kind of questions that they ask. And then after the presentation, you continue the conversation. And all three of those things are things that, close to no one actually does properly in most presentation situations or communication situations in general.
Absolutely. And when you're speaking about the audience, about making the message resonate, I've heard from others is trying to use the industry lingo. Maybe for us marketers, we use terms like SEO and PPC, whereas the audience may not understand what that means. Vice versa, when we're trying to communicate to an industry that we don't have a lot of experience, there's going to be phrases and terms that they use that will kind of be like a trigger word for their ears to perk up and finally notice or listen. So this can be from any industry. How do you try to craft messages before going into anything? Do you use this before meetings? Or are you trying to kind of gather some information and craft your message a little bit different? Or is this more about using like a templated framework for communication across the board?
Well, template is a huge word, and I'm not a big fan of templates in the traditional sense. Here's how you structure your talk. Just fill in the blanks, and then you're going to be rich overnight, right? That's usually that gets you to good results, but usually not to the great and unforgettable results, which hopefully listeners to this podcast aim for. So if you want to do that, it's the individualized, the personal communication that pays attention to the moment, where you're present in the moment and can react to what happens. But of course, you're totally right that you're not going to change people's minds with your words. You're going to have to find their words, your truth, your words, their truth, their words. You're going to have a hard time changing their truth using your words. So it just starts by having conversations, not only in the moment. When you greet them, you have a small talk with them. You try to kind of pick up the nuances that they use, the references that they make, and then you can use that in the moment. But you can do a lot of that research beforehand. You can have conversations to prepare the meeting, hop on social media and look at some of the posts they do to figure out, so how do they speak about those things? Actually, what's on their mind currently? What bothers them at the moment? What's happening in the industry? What's happening in the world that has an impact on the industry? And then weave that in. And of course, you can use AI to ask for those things. Be careful to double check those things because, it can lead you far astray, but at least it gives you a hint, and it's way better than just heading it in there using your prepared deck that some marketing department prepared for you. That's the same for every single customer that has no personal connection.
Absolutely. It is definitely a struggle. One thing I love that you mentioned was it's not just about the act of speaking, communicating, but the other half is going to be the listening, the body language, understanding what they want. Like you said, it's their words. So how can we use that and bring it together? I really love that aspect. And you mentioned using some AI tools. It seems like in the past 3 years, it's found its way into every potential piece of software or hardware that we have. It's somehow powered with AI. Now AI is now redrafting or rereading our emails. I see a lot of jokes on the internet that someone receives an email, they'll send it to ChatGPT and say, can you summarize this for me? And then write a response. They'll send the response back over, and then they're both literally just both using ChatGPT to respond and reply to each other. So there are moments where this could help us improve our communication practices, but also it becomes this crutch that we lean on, and then we no longer actively use those skills to learn. Now we're just relying on tools. How do you see these communication tools, AI, being integrated into what we're doing? Is it good? Is it bad? What should we be considering?
To be totally honest, is that so different than like 20 years, even 60 years ago? Only that at that time, very few people had access to their personal assistants. Like people back then, leaders, CEOs back then, didn't write all their mails and letters. They had secretaries who transcribed what they said literally and sent the letter over. And then they had assistants on the other side reading those letters, summarizing that to the CEO, and perhaps even delegated devising the answer to that assistant, right? So it's not really different. The only thing that's changed is that's been democratized. Everyone's got access to that now. And to me, that feels like a good thing, because in many cases, that makes the communication more concise, clearer in its intent and in its articulation. We get rid of the grammar errors. So it's just easier and nicer. And in many ways, in many situations, actually more kind in the language that's being used. So that's a good thing. The downside is that it feels like it's going to be averaged, like everyone sounds the same. And in a way, that's what happens. Then again, you could look at that a little differently with a little more nuance, because what it actually means is that the bar's been raised. So average just got way better. Average is now what used to be great a couple of years ago. If you want to stand out in that average world, you're going to raise the game for yourself. You'll have to find ways to articulate to yourself that stand out from that average crowd. And I would suppose largely means getting more personal in the way that you communicate, finding your unique voice. What's your personal take? And how can you bring the personal experience that you have, the courage to find and use that unique voice into your communication? That's hard to replicate for AI.
Absolutely. But I love the perspective that you brought to the table. It's kind of like just any other tool. 25 years ago, we had Clippy jumping into our Word document saying, it looks like you're trying to make a resume. Would you like some help? Then we had Grammarly, and then we had other tools. Now they're just becoming consolidated. I guess the same could be said for calculators. It's like maybe we're not having our minds compute these calculations anymore. We're letting a system do it. But look at how much brain power that takes from us and how much it frees up for us to be able to do a lot more. Just consider the advancements that we've made. It's just been incredible. But I want to dive more into the books, because now you have a newer book coming out, The Art of Communicating. You have 1,000 posts on this topic, but you have some previous books as well. Do you mind taking me through your authoring journey and what it was like bringing those books and idea to the marketplace?
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, the way that I started my journey into communications was by starting a blog. So I've been writing my whole life. That actually started back in school, where I had a brilliant physics teacher who encouraged us to write about the topics that we spoke about in the lessons. And he would just meticulously proofread that for us, which was just a phenomenal offer. Helped me really refine and level up my skills there. But that's how I got started. And that's how I try to make sense of the world. If I notice something like that, there has been that glitch in that meeting, or something that I find really fascinating, how that speaker grabbed the attention of the audience, I try to capture that in the moment, but then I try to make sense by writing about it. And over the years, my thoughts assembled into a huge blog today. And that's a valuable tool for me, and I hope for the readers as well. But one of the problems with that is it's always these tiny snippets of thoughts. And that's something that books are just great at overcoming, where you can take many of those tiny thoughts and assemble them into a larger cohesive thought. And I've done that twice in the past. The first book, which was in English, title would be The Aha Effect, where I try to find the angle where we don't have libraries full of books about yet. Because let's face it, the world doesn't need another communications books because there are just libraries with that. But surprisingly, most of those books have a very similar approach, which I would call the wow effect, right? How to wow your audience, how to put on a big show so that they can cheer for you. But I always thought that, wait a second, what use is it if your audience comes after your talk, comes up to you to congratulate you, what a great show it's been? What you actually want them to say is, so what a great idea it is, right? And that's the aha effect. So I tend to think that you shouldn't stop at the wow effect. You should take them all the way down to a profound aha moment, where you've made them see something so profoundly that they cannot unsee it anymore. And that's what you actually want to achieve. And that's what I tend to think way more ambitious than what most books on communication aim for. And then I took that further and applied that to very specific problems, strategy communication. One of the problems that every single business out there faces, mostly every year when they go on these annual strategy retreats and come home totally pumped, enthusiastic about the new strategy. And this time we really nailed this and we're super proud of it, only to discover like 3 weeks in that nothing's changed. And 3 months in, everything's forgotten. We're back to normal and we start the process over next year. I thought that's so much wasted energy, so much wasted brilliance. And that, which often have nothing to do with the strategy wouldn't be brilliant. That's not true because many of these efforts are solid. They are based on solid research. The books about how to craft a great strategy have been written. There are tons of great books on that. But then the brilliance of that strategy gets lost in translation. The team just doesn't understand it because it's the boardroom language. And even if you make them kind of dig through those thousands of PowerPoint slides, they don't really embrace it and don't know what that actually means for the everyday choices they have to make, the actions that they have to take, right? And well, that's a communication problem. And that's got to do a lot with the aha effect on that strategy. So I found that nice little acronym, the PATH, which is both the literal meaning of, so that's the path we're on. That's the path that will lead us to making an impact. But it's also a nice acronym, which stands for plain and simple. Can you find words that everyone can understand? Actionable. Can you translate it into the actions that we actually need to take? Transformative. Do we encourage to make the bold leaps, not just the tiny baby steps? And heartfelt? Is it something that we truly believe in? Does it align the personal goals with the business's goals so that we wholeheartedly stand behind and give it our all?
That is really well said. And I love that framework. Another piece I felt like really resonated with the audience is this strategic retreat that they go on. They come back all energized, really amped up. They try to communicate this aha moment and idea to the team, but they have trouble articulating that and trying to make sense for them because the message they received was delivered to them. Now they need to recraft that and try to translate that to their workers, their audience. That's the challenge. But I think a lot of people out there are hearing that and they're like, wow, that was me 2 months ago, or I'm going next week. And hopefully we'll have similar experiences, but that's kind of how things go.
Yeah, it's a true problem.
Absolutely. Now, you've been in business for 16 plus years. You help people craft better communications. Are you working with individuals? Are you working with the companies themselves? What is the process like with working with a client? Do they usually say, I need just general communication skills, or do they come with a campaign or a product that they're launching? They're like, we really need help communicating this. What is your work involved in? Tell me what it's like working with clients and how you help them.
Well, these are actually the two ways that people come to me. First is that you've got that big thing coming up. It might be a product launch that you've stepped up and made a step in your career and have your first speech. It might be that you've been invited to that keynote, which you're not really sure about. So how to nail that and what the exact story is that you want to tell there. And then we work on that. And that's a remarkably quick process. It blows my mind. It blows my audiences, my clients' minds every time that we're done in half a day, just working on that. It doesn't work always, but all it takes half a day on that story so that you've got the clarity that you've always felt inside, but had trouble finding the words to articulate it. And that's the magic. And that's why it works. It's not like that I'm putting words into your mouth. It's more like I'm pulling it out of you. Like it's always been inside of you. You've been passionate about this thing sometimes for years, and you feel that clarity inside. We just somehow need to pull it out. And the other way that people tend to work with me is that they recognize that they're doing great work, but the communication and the way that they communicate is kind of, it feels like they're standing on the brake, and they need to release that brake and hopefully even push the gas pedal down. So they really want to get their communication to the same level that their dedication and passion towards the work that they do is already at. And that's when we'll work together for an extended amount of time, like meeting weekly or bi-weekly, whatever fits into your schedule, and consistently try to make sense of what happened in that meeting, what happened in that keynote, how to prepare for the upcoming presentation in a better way, and really lead your teams and your customers in a way that they can light the path for their teams and customers.
Absolutely. Isn't it incredible when we're working with a lot of these clients and businesses, how we find that there's so many great ideas or products or business people out there, but there's that just one little piece that is missing that we help them out. We work with them for maybe half day, like you said, and they're just impressed. How do we get all this done? Why do I feel so clear? Like I have direction, I have purpose now. And it's like, thank you, finally. I think that's just the power of when people hire experts to come in. But you can spin your wheels trying to think, how do I communicate this? Maybe you're practicing, but at the end of the day, you need someone with that higher level knowledge, that expertise, that experience to come in and just provide you some direction. And I love the service that you provide to other people and businesses.
Exactly. And it's holding them back. And you can have the best product in the world. It can be a genius idea, but if people don't get it, it's basically worthless, as if it doesn't exist. And the thing is that people don't have the time to figure it out for you. You've got to figure it out for them. And you've got to find the clarity so that they can immediately attach to that product and your idea.
Absolutely. It's huge to try to get a team buy-in into an idea. Oftentimes it's like the leaders are disconnected from the rest of the staff, and it feels like they want to push through ideas, and it's up to that team to help to try to bring that idea to life. But it's a struggle and a challenge that I think people try to work with, motivating and getting buy-ins from the team for their idea, trying to get them to execute, and vice versa. I think a lot of team members want to get the CEO buy-in to maybe some ideas. Maybe they have something they want to bring to the table. And I think better communication, listening, speaking abilities would help solve a lot of problems in this world, and especially in business. That's huge.
Absolutely. It used to work, right? Back a couple of decades ago, we had that command and control style of communication and leadership where you were basically stuck with that huge business in your neighborhood. And that was the only place you could actually get work. And you were basically stuck with the authority of that company. But that time is long gone. And today we're seeing mostly that leaders lead the way model where, leaders supposed to, communicate with clarity and have the answers. But I think, and my impression is that we're even transitioning here to another level, which I like to call the lighting the path way. It's not so much about having all the answers, but tapping into the brilliance of the whole team, trusting them to know the answer. But that means that communication is now your most important tool. Because if you cannot clearly articulate where you're headed, why you're headed there, and why it's going to be us, and find the trust in the team, then you're going to have a hard time. And increasingly, employees have a choice to just head over to that other business with that leader who's better at articulating those things.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to see that shift from the last 50 to 80 years or so, where the employer had more of that power and dominance. The employee didn't have a lot of say or control over that. It seems that there has been a shift, at least since COVID, the work from home, maybe some more opportunities, more people are interested in job hopping in order to increase their salary, because unfortunately the cost of living raises that they get unfortunately put them actually behind. But I think it's just this shift. I think people realize they have more knowledge and power, and that they contribute a lot more to the profiting and capitalism as well. But that shift is flipping again. They're laying off a lot of people. People are scared that AI is coming for their jobs now. But it's just something to be mindful of as the shift happens between the business and employee. And how do we find that balance and make sure people feel fulfilled and can earn a living, versus you want them to get the buy-in. If your team feels like they're just working for you to get your third Porsche or your seventh yacht, that's not very motivating for them, is it?
Yeah, exactly. You got to find words that make sense for them. Again, your truth, your words. If you think you deserve that luxury, it's okay. And you might actually deserve it. But as you said, people increasingly have a choice to work for those who give them meaning and who care to provide them with purpose, not only the lives, but the work that they do, because that's how most people spend most of their lives, actually helping other people do their and run their business. And the more motivating that is, the more inspirational that is for the team, the more effort and actually heart they will put into the work that they do.
Yes, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we're hoping for, is to have a highly motivated team who wants to get results and take action with a leadership team who gets it, understands their feelings, and just the company mission as a whole. Try to find that balance so that way the leaders are happy, the employees are happy, and everybody can be happy. The consumers can be happy. What a perfect world of capitalism we could be in if that's only how we did it.
If people just cared for finding those words that give people that meaning, right? Exactly.
That's right. Absolutely. Dr. Michael Gerharz, where can people find and connect with you online?
I'd encourage to visit my website, michaelgerharz.com, Gerharz, one word, michaelgerharz.com, where you can connect with me, book a session, even a free sample session if you think that you would like to level up. If you just like to check out my work, append/downloads to the URL, and you'll get a bunch of downloads that help you figure out your communication. Or, of course, you'll find pointers to the blog where, as you mentioned, there are more than 1,000 thoughts on how to communicate them properly and find better words. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to follow your journey.
Excellent. And we'll have the links available down in the show notes and the description so everyone can get connected with Dr. Michael Gerharz here. What is on the docket and plan for 2025? Do you have anything new you're excited about, or got some things cooking or you're working up, or are you just trying to continue and do the same great work that you've been doing already?
Well, both. I'm going to travel the path that I've laid out in the past decades almost already, but it's never like the path will be the same as last year. It's always evolving. One thing that I've just started is like a free monthly session where leaders who want to communicate with more clarity and impact just gather together to exchange ideas. It's called the Leaders Light the Path session. You'll find more info on my LinkedIn page if you want to join those. It's a very relaxed format where it's not about me giving you a presentation, but having conversations. People have called it like moments of reflection, where they get a chance to really reflect deeply on the way that they communicate. And yeah, I would love to see you there.
That'd be excellent. I would love it. I'm going to check out those links and make sure I get added to that event, because I love the self-reflection and communicating and speaking with other people. We can learn a lot from other people. And if I can provide any value to anyone else, I'm just paying it forward at that point. I would love to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey, your tips and tricks with us. The art of communicating is so very important. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Congratulations, and looking forward to your future success as well.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Same here.